voice and comments being recorded and published. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded, and their voice, image and comments will form part of the live stream and recording. Please note that Councillor Maguire will be a few moments late this evening. The Narra Court Lucindale Council acknowledge and respect our complex history, and we welcome everyone to build our future together. Item 2, elected members' declaration of interest. There are none. Public forum. Anyone from the public here today would like to speak unannounced? No. I have petitions and deputations. I'll ask, please welcome Daniel Moore from the Francis Progress Association to address the meeting. You can be wherever you wish to be, Danielle. I suggest over there and, you know, beyond Abbey somewhere would be perfect.
Okay, cool.
It might just be hard with the projector. Is that in your eyes?
Okay.
Needs to eyes.
Audio wise, can you go there? Yeah, just audio wise for a live stream. You can be in that corner.
So you'll be audio, but you won't be, the audio's there, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So microphone wise, I think.
Okay.
Come over your council.
Be up here. To all those people watching. Thank you, Danielle. The floor is yours.
No worries. Thank you, Patrick. And thanks again for all of Council coming out and continuing this, I guess, engagement in, if you like, the outposts of the Narra Court Lucindale Council region to sort of come and provide an opportunity for the community out here at Francis to engage and let you know what's happening. Potentially some feedback for future is maybe whether there's an opportunity to put a one-page or something about how local community members potentially can come and speak at these meetings, what the timeframes are, just to maybe increase the amount of people that will come and engage with these sorts of things. I think for a lot of people they just don't know the process, so there's probably an opportunity there going forward. For us, since the last meeting, which I think was 12 months, we've had, again, lots of positive interactions and things happening, and one of the big things has been the installation of the BMX track, which is just over to the north. And I'd particularly like to thank Paul for his sort of application and endorsement of the project, and certainly endorsing the shade shelters that will come with that track as well. I think that will be a really good feature, and we hope that we'll get lots of use in the sort of future. So thank you for that, and we can certainly tick off. Obviously, we've had lots of strategic planning, and it's good to see that the master plan has been endorsed, that potentially reflects the things that have been done, and then other things that need to be added as part of that. And it was a good learning for all of us initially when to have Wendy Holland come and thinking, oh, we've got to have another level of engagement. But I think what did come out of that process was acknowledgement that the requirements for Francis as a community go beyond just infrastructure. They also are about some of the services and potential for local government and where they fit in terms of bringing those services. Certainly public transport, the opportunity for the library to bring some of their workshops and things out to the community, I think would be well received with the school and members of the community. So I think that's been a positive step, and certainly we've learnt a lot as an association and a community about the process of how we put things in front of local government to ensure that they're factored into the budget. That's been a big learning for us, and certainly our focus is still very much centred here at this, what we consider like the community hub / rec reserve precinct, and we have just made it to the second round of the Play Your Way federal grant, so obviously we're looking for local government endorsement in that space with our courts resurfacing, which have got to a point, like a lot of other sports, I guess, precincts in the area, where we potentially could get to the point where we won't be able to play on this surface. So it has become front and centre priority for us as a community. Outside of that, the Bowls Club have got plans up for a new shed, and we're certainly in the process of seeking grants for that. The reworking of the club rooms, using the existing shell of the football club rooms and seeing what we can do to update the change rooms, that sort of thing there, and our lighting, which is of subpar sort of standard. Essentially, a 4 of the oval, they train in the dark at the moment. So we are, our request as a community, obviously there's an audit going on at the moment within council for sports infrastructure. We just ask and appeal that when that information comes, that we all have an opportunity to see what comes out of that as well, and that is transparent, and you can use that to sort of feed into our grants and applications that are going on along the side. So certainly probably one of the big issues it's been bubbling away for a long time and managed to a point, but it's sort of reached a critical point that we need to address, is the general maintenance and mowing of the town. I know it's factored into the strategic planning. There's an allocation in there for provision of, I think it's $2,500 for mowing, something like that. We've got volunteers that have been doing that. They are unable to do that anymore. We really believe as a community, we shouldn't even have to be requesting for the town to be mowed, pruned, town centre to be maintained. That should just be part of the general operational works that exist. I'm pretty sure no one in Narraport, I know they might ring up to say hurry up and mow Memorial over quicker, but they don't have to ring up and request for those things to happen, they just happen. And they're all ratepayers out here. I don't think it's an unreasonable request to say. And it's not our job either to say when they should come and mow. There's a skill set exists within the general works maintenance group to say, obviously there's going to be more mowing happening in the spring and less mowing happening in the summer. That's that simple. So whatever we need to do to sort of get that process moving, or how that works, I'm not sure. We just want to flag it that it becomes a fixture of the general works program for the council, is our appeal.
I'm sure you've been heard.
Okay, good. Sorry, I'm on repeat now. And then I guess the other couple of things, and it does relate to here. Recently I did put in a request. An individual came to me about putting in I know it sounds trivial, but a doggy do bag here. This is an RV camping site, and I guess the response was, well, ultimately the Rec Reserve leases this precinct. They're responsible for the facilities that sit on that. And I have to say my response to that was really like, again, my appeal is, when is there a little bit of give and take around something that wouldn't have been a big cost to council, and when do they step in and that just becomes a provision of, being I guess a ratepayer out here. So they're the sort of bit we have so many positive interactions. I don't want to make it a negative, but they're the sorts of things, I guess it's that when we do approach, more about how can we help you, as opposed to, no, that's not in the rules type philosophy. I think there's opportunity there to grow that relationship a bit better. We are sort of asking for advocacy of, again, another ongoing issue around the maintenance of the rail yard site at the silo area. Certainly, there's, I suppose take community hat off and then my role in the state office. Certainly they're trying to work there to work with the Department of Infrastructure around where they fit in all of this. But if there's an opportunity for council to, whether it's a letter to, it just needs to be regularly slashed. That's our issue. It has been spoken about fencing it off and maybe putting sheep, all that in there, but there's no water points there. and again, who pays for the fencing, all of that sort of thing. The most practical solution, if I'm representing you right, Richard, is really for it to be regularly slashed. So, and more from a fire prevention and even just general appeal of the town as well. So, and this is again, this is probably just an additional in terms of maybe some assistance. Certainly the local CFS have come, regarding some funds they've had that were raised by the community, and they would like to distribute them back to the rec reserve, and have been told they can't. And I guess it's that's more of just a letter of support from council around how we may be able to return those funds back to the community. I think outside of that, the mowing and the maintenance of the town is probably one for us, and certainly just to let you know that we're continuing to go for grants and to develop these projects in the next few years and put the sort of community in a position where we continue to play sport and have functions and the like here. So, thanks.
So, thank you, Danielle. And are there any questions? Because I have one.
Yep.
Especially about the railway line to the north, which has been a concern, and whether DIT had picked up on that, or whether there'd been some arrangement made with neighbouring farmers, etc.
Not that I'm aware, but it's probably a good one, to follow. It's sort of, I know you guys all saw it last time, but I don't think much more's happened, and I appreciate it's not really your government's responsibility, but...
And talking to Mr. Kutzentones is always good fun anyway.
Just on from that, Mr. Mayor, that's required. We've got a similar sort of problem with their railway and the railway and there. It's an EMS, so same problem.
Yeah.
Any questions of Councillor Wood?
Thank you. I know that you said the point has been noted around mowing, but also in regard to request for perhaps to put not too fine a point on it, the dog poo bags and maintenance of the rail reserve. Can we formalise that by saying we'll take it to a SAP meeting?
Of course. Any other questions? Councillor Crosland.
I just wanted to make the point, I had a discussion with the CEO regarding the mowing, and I asked the same thing, it doesn't need to be formalised, but I think from the conversation we've had, that it will definitely be just worked out and put into the operation.
Yeah, so with mowing, Mr. McCrosty's had some good conversations with DIT about us advising them when it needs to be mowed, slashed or whatever. But the limitation on that, we can only make them slash for fire protection rather than aesthetics. So they may come to the party, but more likely they may, So we're pretty confident they will do some works, but perhaps not to the degree that you may want. But it's a start on it.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Very good.
Thanks,
Is this no more? Thank you very much,
No worries.
Daniel.
Thank you.
Thank you. Smith and Craig. I'd now like to welcome Jason Law. Jason would like to inform the councillors about the Narracourt Aerodrome and such like. Welcome, Jason.
Beautiful. Thank you, Patrick. And excuse me if I've got to refer to notes a bit, not quite as fluent as Danielle, but I am speaking on behalf of a few people, so I'll just refer back if that's okay. Would like to thank Council for allowing an opportunity. I'm sure our esteemed elected members are aware of my efforts of late, and it's nice to come and actually put a face to everyone. For the record, for those that don't know, I own Southern Air Ag. I've been at the airport now for 16 years and the chief pilot, and very heavily involved in aviation. And I guess I'd like to start by perhaps underpinning a little bit about the Narracourt Aerodrome and how magnificent a facility it is. anyone who's travelled around the regions and involved in aviation would soon see that Narraport's very, very well serviced, and it's something we should be proud of, and it shouldn't be allowed to slip, and it shouldn't go unrecognised. I guess since my involvement of owning Southern Air, we've become a bigger part of the future of the aerodrome and the running of the aerodrome. And in so doing, it's been a little bit unfortunate, but we've stumbled across what has become very apparently a big disconnect between yourselves and the governing bodies that are looking after the aerodrome and the day-to-day running of what happens there. And by no means is this a blight on anyone. I think all we've done is we've managed to identify a problem in the system, and hopefully this will be stage one going towards rectifying that. What we've got out there is a very significant base for the region, for the area, across the state. Narraport services the entire southeast and well up towards Bordertown, purely from us. Helicopters, maintenance facilities are the same. And the commercial operations that are around there are, I would suggest, only second to none in South Australia. But having become obvious to us that that unfortunately the discussions around the operations of the aerodrome, a proposal was put together by people involved there that would create a Narraport users group. As the name defines, it's people that are involved in the airport, have a vested interest in the running of that airport to hopefully close the gap of knowledge back to council and those in decision-making positions. And the suggestion was that we would like to maintain a positive and accountable collaboration with council and government based on actual knowledge and understanding of the aerodrome and its users. We've got a genuine desire to support the continual maintenance and improvement of the infrastructure and the associated benefits of such improvements. We'd like to protect and secure the existing investments and provide confidence and surety for continued investment into the future. And in light of that, I've had discussions with what we've decided will be a good representation of the airport, and we've come up with Charles Vine, who's the owner and chief mechanic of Flight Tech Aviation, the maintenance facility. Joe Corey, who is the vice president of the Narraport Aero Club, is a local flying instructor, and he's got very sound knowledge in the entire GA, general aviation sector. Digby Seymour, who a lot of you would know from South Killanoola, who's also a flying instructor and owner of Sport Flight Flying. Andrew Bird, better known as Tub, who's the operations manager of Helifarm, and myself as owner and chief pilot of Southern Air Ag. And all have expressed their interest and keenness to be involved in this cause also. And I'd say, in essence, this group is already in existence, and main so for the reason for the notice is to ensure that they are involved in every stage, and this doesn't become seen as a one-man stand or one-man opinion. Also, I'd like to throw into that too. Well, you can take me out of the equation if you like, but let's say the other four is probably as good a knowledgeable cross-section as you'll find in aviation, and the fact that those four people, and myself if you want to throw it in there, are prepared to be part of this and offer their knowledge is not to be downplayed. And our main objective, I suppose, is to ensure that our voice is heard by the people who need to hear it. There's plenty of knowledge in that little group, and we just want to ensure that funding and planning required for the aerodrome to utilise itself to its fullest in the simplest method possible. While we have initiated our own run committee and we've had these discussions, it's been disappointing, I'd say, unfortunately, that thus far I haven't really gone anywhere through what would be traditional channels of contact with council. And I'm not going to sugarcoat that, that has been disappointing. We're 8 months in now to my initial point of contact and I'm yet to have anything. So, which has brought us to where we are today. In light of that, it has been proposed to myself that a Section 41 committee may be the order of the day. That is not for us to decide. In our opinion, we've confirmed with the 5 groups. This is where we rely on. This is where we rely on council. I can tell you that we are not necessarily dying to be on a committee for council, but we are more than prepared and understand the importance of falling under a banner for the council. And for that, if that is the case, and that is the simplest way forward, then we will gladly oblige. We have had some concerns, and I will say there has been a few councils that have contacted me personally, and I'll say thank you very much for that. And it has been great to have a one-on-one, and I would sincerely suggest that you keep that going, because it really does make a difference to know that there is a little bit of something happening or going through to the right ears. And in light of that, there's probably a few things that I would like to have an opportunity to address if this committee is to come into any sort of formation, and that is, firstly, that there was a suggestion that the Lucendale Aerodrome is to fall under this committee or advisory role as well. I have suggested that to the others, and we are of a general consensus that wouldn't be appropriate. By very definition, the Narracourt Users Group is designed by people who are invested heavily in Narracourt and looking to grow the aerodrome and looking at the future of the Narracourt Aerodrome. Lucendale, while it's a great facility, is only an aircraft landing area. There is no commercial operations. You look at Narracourt, we've got 25 full-time staff. It's a certified airport. There's 4 operating businesses there. It is a very different facility, and I think it would actually be remiss on both cases if they weren't treated in their own right for what they are. Having said that, the formation and the jurisdiction of a committee, if the council chooses to go down the Section 41 path, will be obviously at your disposal and your fruition, and we'll take that back to our group as to whether we would take it on board as to what council suggested would like to do. Another concern in relation to that is that not one of the 5 members I've suggested has any affiliation with Lucendale. I don't think that makes for a fair cross-representation either. And we are a little concerned that it does dilute the primary objective of what we're trying to achieve here, which is the shoring up and the surety of the commercial operations on the aerodrome and the infrastructure itself moving forwards. There has been some other issues which I'm going to skim over because I think some of these are probably null and void, but there has been some proposals towards the formation of this group and what it might look like, whether it's going to be too large to handle if we have our 5 representatives and a couple of elected members or a member of administration or something, followed up with if we had our own committee and then we had our own delegate to report to a Section 41. I can promise you that the driving factor of all of us is to be the simplest, lowest effort possible, and I think that would be counterintuitive. All 5 of us would strongly suggest that we would like a meeting of the 5 of us and whatever council representatives, which I think would be very important to close that knowledge gap and to have some councillors or some people who would like to share it further up the chain actually in the room with us, experience what we're saying, understand what we're saying, and take it where it needs. I don't think this needs to be diluted through 3 tiers of committees. Our alternative, I suppose, outside of a regulatory committee formed through council is that we will continue on our way, which we are more than happy to do. Our unofficial group is already up and running. We regularly contact each other. Any matters that come up, we will be addressing ourselves amongst ourselves, and we are happy to liaise direct with council or the government bodies as well. I've spoken to Passive and McBride a couple of times. Again, a little disheartened by the way that the process works when I've been liaising outside of a government body with council. Kind of hope that if we move forward with our own committee that might be a bit slipperier. If it's not, we're back on the Section 41 path, I presume. The main things that the boys would like me to, would like to have identified is what we want to do going forwards. Primarily, we're not asking for money. I know council gets sick, works department gets sick of it, everyone gets sick of everyone putting their hand out, wants money. Yes, there's going to be a time and a place for funding, but it really isn't our primary objective in liaising with council. We're mainly after ensuring that future funding is allocated in the best possible manner. It's a big thing. We don't want to see wastage. We're lucky enough to get what we can. We want to involve the people who are in the know in the running of this operation and who understand aviation to be a part of where it gets allocated. We want to make sure all potential avenues for funding are explored, including state, federal, the whole lot. We want to ensure, and if that requires participation from us, obviously we can't officially apply because we don't own the land, but for us to be part of any grants process, we will gladly be involved, and we just want to ensure that all of those avenues are exhausted. The security of the aerodrome users is protected to ensure privately funded growth. I'll touch on that one in a minute if I may, because that one's probably got more of a personal slant than the committee itself. But the big one for me is looking to move forward in a positive, united collaboration with council. And I really want to make sure that gets tabled. This is not, we're not angry people, we're not angry ratepayers. We've got a great facility that our region should be super proud of, and it is going in the right direction, and I think it is going to be incredibly fruitful if we can be all on the same page and treat this as a united collaboration, and that comes wholeheartedly across the board of the airport. It's absolutely, we're coming from, we are not here to kowtow to council, we're not here to tell everyone off or to stamp our feet. This is supposed to be step one in a very positive, united move forward with that airport. Enough of that. If I can just put a bit of a break between those two, so that would be what has been agreed upon with our fellow unofficial committee members back at the airport. But just if I can touch briefly on a few of the matters that were raised by myself earlier. Ironically, they are across the board, but just in light of keeping it official, I haven't actually gone through these boys, but I can promise you they're all on the same page. The lease situation at the airport, which I believe is tabled for tonight anyway, but if I can just put a real world spin on that too, we're looking at a 5 plus 5 year lease terms and agreement at the council. It is written as a stipulation in the council's own written lease that we are not to use anything for security on the aerodrome. Take it or leave that one. I mean, we could be here all evening if we wanted to discuss that, but the real world nature of what we're looking at, well, to start with, no financial institution is going to look at you with a 5 plus 5 year lease, so it's null and void, even if council did allow it. But the situation we've got out there is we have got multiple people who have mortgaged their own equity, their own family homes, to continue and grow the business and the services provided from the Narrabri Airport, and we don't have any real security. And by real security, I mean, hypothetically, the council liquidates the airport tomorrow, someone buys it, and we get a knock on the door saying you've got 2 years and your leases are going to be $100 grand or $1 million or you're off. So we've got real live people who are mortgaging their homes and taking a risk for what I think are pretty unrealistic lease conditions. And for my mind, it was something I brought up with a member that I did talk to, and I have had in early discussions, the 21 plus 21 year lease agreement that can happen with council land or Crown land under council care and control. And I will absolutely stand corrected, but I'm yet to have any answer as to what liability that would create the council if we didn't get that rubber stamped off at a local level, which I believe is possible. I can't see any reason or any loss to the council to shoring up our security on that aerodrome by stamping off on a 21 plus 21 year adjustment to our lease agreements. And hand on heart, I'll stand here corrected if someone can provide me a reason or a costing or a downside to council doing that, because I haven't been able to see one, and I think it would be very, very disappointing if that doesn't thoroughly get looked at as an offer of support to the people that are actually out there risking their own investments. Obviously there's a parallel to be drawn with the Lucerdale Netball Football Club at the moment, and I know that's been before you for a few years, but it is the format that I think would be possible for us. And I'm not a particularly good bureaucrat, but I would like to think that these things could potentially be moved through systems a little bit quicker than it is. We do see this as a positive and a united path forward, and we sincerely hope that it is accepted by council as that, and council returns the favour to us in bringing to the table a positive united attitude towards moving this forwards. There's some opportunity for some significant improvements on the Narrabri Aerodrome in the not too distant future. I'm heavily involved in the air operations.
If I can allow 2 more minutes. 2
more minutes will be fine. I'm heavily involved in the air operations for the CFS. We've got one of the rare maintenance facilities in South Australia, obviously the spraying and all the rest of it. There is going to be a growth in that sector. We are prepared to put ourselves out there. We are prepared to fund second filling stations, rotary wing support out of Southern Air, out of our own time, out of our own infrastructure. We are prepared to do that, but we are going to want to try and see that council land, the council facility, continue on an upward trend to make sure that we are in a position to utilise that opportunity when it presents, and it will present, I can promise you that. There has been reservations about the fact that we've got economic interests in the airport. Are we questionable being supported by council if we've got economic interests into it? Well, my answer to that would be we have got economic interests, however we are paying well for our lease facilities out there. And our economic interest is bringing in services to Narracourt that otherwise wouldn't. And case in point would be the retailing of the Jet A1 fuel at Narracourt, which was privately funded by Brett and Tanya Wilson, my predecessors, and I've since bought that business. That has allowed Rescue 1 helicopters now, with their range, to come to Narracourt and service the entire region. Prior to us retailing jet fuel, that wasn't possible. So you can now have a Rescue 1 helicopter pull a motorbike rider out of the Beachport sand dunes, whereas before it was an ambulance ride to the Mount Gambier airstrip. This is the sort of stuff that people that are economically involved in growing businesses, albeit on council land, are the services that will be insured and brought to the table for our region. And watch this space, there will be air ops based out of Narracourt in my time, and I think it's important that we take advantage of that and be in preparation for that when that does happen. Finally, that's it. That's all I'd like to say. I'll wind it up for you. I am meeting with Tony Passon next week. He has reached out just on a query I had about funding, and it would be fabulous if I could take to him a positive attitude from council and say I had a wonderful chat, and we're really looking forward to moving together forwards. I think that would be great.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks, Jason.
I'm sure there would be questions of Jason, which I will allow if there are any. Councillor Downey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Jason, just real quick, on the way out, and whether it's lending to what you've been talking about, I think it does. On the way out today, they're talking about $50 million in grants for regional airstrips. I think the window is fairly narrow. I've been able to access that. Good to tell Tony next week. But in your opinion, what should we be looking at as a council? Because I think we can access that grant.
You have to pull off which grants they're talking about. The federal stuff tends to lean heavier towards the bigger aerodromes, the RPT stuff, like in Gambier, where there's regular public transport. Having said that, we'll throw that in the ring, I'm sure. McBride's have indicated there will be another round of rural and remote aerodrome funding, which is around 10 or something. I think at the end of this year they'll be announcing that. There's the ones that we want to get involved in. I won't bore you with the detail, but we've got a list of 5 or 6 priorities which we think would serve us well out of the airport. It's essentially bitumising, it's upgrading the spec of the pavement to handle 7-tonne bombers, Black Hawk helicopters, Rescue 1 helicopters. It's about upgrading our facility that was designed for single-seat aeroplanes.
And I think the important thing is that upgrades that would benefit the airport are benefit to the community. That's what that's the absolute premise of why these people are sitting in this room.
Hands down, and I think the air wing side of emergency service is getting bigger and bigger. I mean, we've all seen orphan flying doctors in there, and having Rescue 1, the police helicopter now as well, is routinely coming in. We need the facilities to handle those guys. It's not going anywhere.
I was just thinking, in closing, it's important to note that the primary response zone for CFS has now moved Kingston, Mark Collett, Bordertown, so Narracourt will become way more important as far as primary response zone and what's the word we use for aircraft being on site for deployment of aircraft, etc.
And it'll be a push primarily coming from me for no economic gain whatsoever will be to have bombers permanently based in Narracourt. The last budget has allowed 4 single-engine air tankers to be based in Mount Gambier, which is absurd. There should be 2 based in Narracourt. This is what we should have our infrastructure ready for. And the 40-minute response time that is required to consider a primary response zone would take that to the bottom of Narcat and would take it across to Tintinara, which then marries up with the response zone from the Claremont Air Base out of Adelaide. It is a no-brainer and 0 cost. The funding is already there, they've approved the planes, and we should be putting our hands into Narracourt.
Thank you, Jason.
No worries.
And so thank you, Jason. I think that was important that you could make that presentation with all the councillors present, and we can discuss that further this evening. We'll move to item 5, the confirmation of the minutes. Would someone like to move the minutes? Councillor Dennis, a second to Councillor Goodman. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 6, matters laid on the table from a previous meeting. Councillor Goodman.
I would like to move to take that off the table, if that would be okay. Excellent. So yes, I'd like to move a motion that the council resolution to defer the adoption of the revised public consultation and community engagement policy is brought off the table.
Thank you, Councillor Goodman. Councillor Maguire.
I'm happy to second.
Happy to second. All those in favour? Thank you very much, and thank you, Councillor Maguire, Goodman and Mrs Collins for working through that. And I believe there will be some amendments which will...
May I make an additional, move an additional motion in regard to that?
Councillor Goodman.
So as you were referencing, Ms Collins, Councillor Maguire and I sat down and we worked through the consultation policy, and we have agreed that for the interim it would be best to go back to the previous policy with some amendments made until such time as the Local Government Act is amended, and then we can go down this path. So with that in mind, I'd like to move, I just lost move that the administration provide an updated draft review to Council of the public consultation and community engagement policy with only minor edits, and Council defers consideration of a major review until the new legislation is enacted on the establishment of a community engagement charter.
Thank you, Councillor Goodman. Do you wish to speak to it? Beyond the motion?
Only in that I believe Ms Collins has already done the work to make the amendments to that policy that can be circulated for endorsement at the next meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Goodman. Do I have a second? Councillor Maguire, do you wish to speak? Any discussion? There being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 7, Mayor's report as tabled. My goodness, it's a long time since I wrote that. I move. Would someone like to second my report? Councillor Dennis, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you, carried. I'd like to just make note, it's been, and I also note that the CEO in his report mentioned the Limestone Coast Local Government Association, and I've mentioned it before. Since I have become Mayor and sit on this, on the Limestone Coast Local Government Association, we've had a CEO, an interim CEO, a CEO that got to the threshold of becoming the permanent CEO and resigned, and now we have another interim CEO. We're 2 years in. It's been, in conservative terms, incredibly frustrating. And for me to bring to this table you know, the role and responsibility of the Limestone Coast Local Government Association is quite tricky for me. It does do good things. It does do good things, I believe, in the tourism area with their destinations. And you had a presentation from Cape Napa, and the reports I think that are delivered are good and consistent and show growth. We also do good work with sport and with our current program. But beyond that, and before my time, which I'm sure all of you members know about that have been involved with local government, the Limestone Coast Local Government Association collaborates to advocate for roads and the really big things that are important to the region as a whole, including funding, which I'm sure the CEO can talk about, grant funding. We have had an inordinate number of special meetings and in-confidence meetings, and I would like to hope before the end of my term that we are seeing some positive actions out of Limestone Coast Local Government Association. Wattle Rangers pulled out. They said they'll come back to the table. It is disappointing, in my view, that Wattle Range did that, and I believe that some of us have gone to Wattle Range and said, if you want to be part of the change, or if there is an issue, you need to be sitting at the table and not sitting away from the table. But they are remaining where they are for the time being, and are willing to come back when change has been initiated, which I find problematic if we don't know what the issues are, especially coming from them. I'll leave my report at that. I'd like, hopefully, over the near future, I can bring you more and better, well, not more reporting, but better reports from the Limestone Coast Local Government Association. Thank you. Item 8, and I won't take any questions on that. Item 8, I see Councillor Crosling has written a report.
Can I just add a couple
And
of points?
if you wish, Councillor Crosling.
I just wanted to add a
Just a
few...
point of order, I don't think we voted on your
I thank you.
Councillor Ross picked it up on your
Carry on. I think we did.
Did we? Got a second. Well, Councillor Ross.
I didn't need to be moved, did it?
No, I just...
I don't know we did.
Okay.
Did you second it?
No,
I'm doing well so far.
Councillor Crosling, you have the room.
Okay, excellent, thanks. I just want to point out a couple of things, add a few more comments to my elected members' report. I was fortunate enough to, and Councillor Ross, be a part of, I suppose, the judging panel for the Narrabri High School Year 10 pitch, their Shark Tank. I just wanted to give a bit of an update on some of those ideas that came out of that. There was an underlying theme of a lack of youth spaces in our council area. That was, came through very strongly on a couple of things. Obviously, they wanted a KFC. They were looking at a new shopping mall / arcade in Mitre 10 building. They had all wonderful ideas of getting a EB Games and a Universal store and a food court and so forth. And there was a couple of those sorts of, like I said, underlying theme that there isn't a lot for our youth in our council area. There was the need for a study hub, which I think is, there's that kind of, that age bracket that don't feel like they've got a lot of spaces within their council area. And one that I thought was fabulous, and it was a brilliant presentation, and I think I'd love the kids to actually come and present it to us as elected members, was a renewable energy solution for Narra Court. It was an absolutely fantastic presentation. They had models made of wind things. It was awesome. They did a fabulous job, and I just think it'd be something that might actually float with them to come and present to us, because it was a really good presentation. Just on the art gallery AGM, I just want to make note that Julielle has continued on as the president of the Narra Court Art Gallery, and there's been a couple of new members come on board, and they are going onwards and upwards. They've changed a lot of things in their strategic area of how they charge out for their programs, how many exhibitions they have. They obviously came and did a deputation to us as council saying, they were lacking funds, so they have recognised that and they're moving forward, which is really good. And lastly, I just want to mention, last night Amir and I had the Narra Court Scouts come to the chamber. We did a little presentation. They wanted to learn all about local government and council, and it was fabulous. They were truly a very engaged group of kids. We walked them through the council chambers. We showed them a 10-minute video about how local government works, and it was really good to see. So hopefully we might be able to do that a little bit more with more school students within our council area. And just lastly, personally, I'd just like to see a few more elected members doing these sorts of reports. We all sit on committees outside, whether it needs to come to a council meeting. If you miss the deadline, that's fine. Maybe even just chucking it out in an email to elected members to let everyone know. I think that's the whole point of us all sitting on committees outside of council, is to make sure that we can give that feedback back to all of us so we know what's happening within the community. So I'd like to see just a little bit more of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crosling. And I also encouraged the Cubs last night to tune in at 5 o'clock tonight, so a big shout out to the Narracourt Cub group if they're on. Councillor McGuire.
A question through the chair to Deputy Mayor. In light of the art gallery, there's a bit on social media about ghost tours. Is that actual happening, or you don't know anything about it?
I can't. Jane Ellis might, as our Arts and Culture Coordinator. She goes to the meetings more than I do, so I haven't heard anything about ghost tours. So can't shed any light on that one. Can find out and get back to you.
Oh, you said that, right.
Item 9, Mr. Smart.
Thank you. Continue on from Mayor's items, the LCLGA. For my purpose, it's the hopeful endorsement of the annual business plan. As is in my report, this is somewhat a formality. The LCLGA have already adopted their budget. Council's adopted our budget with all those amounts in there for 24-25. But they didn't do the annual business plan, so it's a requirement of their charter. But with all that, I'd like to back up the Mayor's comments. In the last 2 years definitely been frustrating on what the LCLGA as a collective board have been doing or not doing, and that to my way of thinking it largely works around not having a clear direction of what the LCLGA should be doing at this point in time. And that's a collective from the seven mayors that did sit on the board. As already advised, Wattle Range Council have withdrawn. There are some complexities in that that they have to give 3 months' notice, and they have to get the minister's approval to withdraw. So the minister doesn't give that approval. They then have to remain a member of the LCLGA and hopefully come back to the table. So there may be a mechanism where they stay at the table. And I agree, you can't come up with what the solutions are, can't outline what concerns are without being at the table to have good discussions. So, look, overall the LCLGA can do good things, and it continues to have some positive outcomes for this council. So the SLRP funding that we've been quite successful in getting for road construction, that comes through the regional transport strategy. So recommendations come from the LCLGA on those priorities, which assists us. We've just had the all the sport rec facility audits, and that was through the LCLGA, partly funded by the state through them and partly by us. Daniel, we got the audit back today. We only hit our desk today, so we'll have a chance to have a look at what that tells us first and put that in front of the council. So overall, LCLGA does good things. It's had two permanent CEOs, 2 interim CEOs in less than 2 years, which would challenge any organisation to be able to function, I think, properly from an administrative and then how that affects the board. There's a lot of, I guess, legal matters to work through with Wattle Range's withdrawal, and as a CEO forum yesterday, we've asked a lot of those questions of what is the cause and effect of that. So if you sit outside the room, what benefits do you get from the LCLGA, because they are still a member of our region. I guess the answer to that, if you're outside the room, you're still getting benefits, why would the other 6 want to be in the room and paying for that? So my recommendation is that we endorse the annual business plan with some buts. So you have to give 3 months notice to withdraw. So if you withdraw in a financial year, you still have to pay the subscriptions for that financial year. So if you consider withdrawing, you probably should do it in about March rather than July or August. The effect on one withdrawing, does that cause more than one to withdraw? What does that do to our member subscriptions in the future? That would obviously increase it. There's programs within LCLGA that I think we as a council need to consider what benefits we get or should we be contributing, and they're in my report. One's the RDA funding that collectively we put in about 100,000 to RDA from the 7 councils. Not suggesting RDA is shouldn't receive that funding, but there are different funding models across the state where some regions do fund, some don't. And look, there's been some good positive discussions with the new CEO of RDA over the last few months that weren't there before. But it's not casting aspersions on RDA, it's just should we be funding it or shouldn't we? Regional tourism getting a lot of discussion at the moment. SATC are doing a significant review of how it funds regions, so we need to see the outcomes of that. And a whole range of other activities. So my suggestion is we endorse this tonight, but probably as part of our 25-26 budget we start having some good discussions about what that funding means. By then hopefully LCLGA have sorted what their future direction is, what their actual future purpose is. We've got a workshop 13th of September that the Mayor will be very active at, I'm sure. To try to start sorting those challenges out. So hopefully over the next month or two that will bear some positive outcomes. So recommendations there, happy to take questions on that one.
Councillor Dennis.
Recommendation, Speaker.
Councillor Dennis moves. Second please. Councillor Turner. If there's no further, Councillor Dennis.
Just in relation to that, through the motion, I'd like to thank the Mayor and the CEO for their contribution. I certainly had some questions before I came to the chamber, and I think they've successfully answered those without having to ask those questions. I think we as councillors will be looking for guidance from both the Mayor and the CEO on the Limestone Coast LGA. I know there's some concern in the community about its functionality. I respect the point about the March trigger. We've paid the money, we'll stick the course and then review it in partnership and collaboration together. I definitely think there's real benefits for the region in the tourism space. However, looking at the balance sheet and the cost versus the outcomes, it doesn't add up at the moment, but I think that I'm looking forward to the guidance moving forward, and yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Dennis. Councillor Turner.
I'm also on the RDA board, but I'm not speaking about that, but I can see you need a united voice for the Limestone Coast. If you have councils that are all just individuals, then you don't get a one message that is going through the region, whether it's tourism or business or governments don't listen to you for grants. So it's really important, I think, that all of the councils in the Limestone Coast stay united and have a collective voice for the region. It's a prosperous region, but united we stand, divided we fall, and I think we would fall if we were divided.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Any further discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Mr. Smart.
Next item, the RPP funding application. Back in September last year, we agreed in principle to explore a partnership with Narracor Caves, or National Parks and Wildlife Service. So we've held several meetings between Caves and Council and some other stakeholders over that time. It's now culminated in getting hopefully close to making a joint application. So I won't go through all the details in my report, it's all been all there for you to have a read. I believe it's one of those unique opportunities where the funding criteria means we have to form a partnership, so council alone can't apply for that funding, the Caves alone can't apply for that funding. It has to be a true partnership. The more partners in that, probably the greater chance you have. There has been no successful funding applications from South Australia as yet. There's been applications made but no funding provided. With the World Heritage Caves, that gives us a great opportunity not only for them to improve their infrastructure but to see outcomes of some of the projects that we have on our various master plans and within our strategic plans. So there's two streams for this funding. So stream one, which is what I'm suggesting we make application to and support that from council, is about the planning, gaining the approvals, doing the legwork to make the various projects that may move into a stage stream 2 application essentially shovel ready to do. The fund both in stream 1 and stream 2 doesn't require matching funding, which is fairly unusual but unique. Again, it provides a unique opportunity where you don't have to have a lot of I guess, cash input to get your projects up. So what we are broadly looking at, and this is only suggestions because Stream 1 explores all these ideas, it comes back with your business case, your approvals, etc., to see whether it actually stacks up to go to a Stream 2 application. So from the caves perspective, they're looking at improving their infrastructure visitor services out the caves, probably to the extent of $20 million investment. I've suggested projects within council's master plans that fit with that caves connection, because it's meant to be about a precinct type approach, so they all have to be connected in some way. So some of the projects from our town rejuve centre, some of the main streets on the road, Jones, Bank to Garris, we're also looking at that open space on the rail lands for a possible wetlands and open space infrastructure, looking at putting some of those regional trails into play, so the caves to Cabernet, which Wattle Range have done the majority of their part, but also looking towards Kingston, Lucendale and Kingston, and because the trail would go straight past, including Leckle Park within that scope as well. So what I'm suggesting is our investment up front would be 50,000 committed, so if you don't get approval for Stream 1, we don't have to, so that we don't pay any funds to anyone. If we're successful in Stream 1, that 50,000 goes into the planning for our projects. So as you would know, the Rejuve plan, most of that work has been done by Tonkin Consulting for the main parts. So we're allowed to include that as in-kind funding support. So again, it's monies that we've already expended that hopefully will boost our chances of being successful. So that 50,000, the caves have committed up to 100,000, and that, so 150,000 hopefully gets you a return of about 1.5 million to do a lot of the planning, approvals, business case, shovel ready. Stream 2, if we can get that far, council gets the opportunity to have a look at that, but that can be funded 100% by the federal government. So it will probably look better if council, caves, others can contribute to that pool if we get that far. As an example, Leckle Park, which the community involvement that's been committed in that plan, that can be put in there as in kind. We'd probably approach Landscapes SA for wetlands type projects to SATC. We'd most likely collectively approach for some of the trail projects. So it's about bringing a whole host of partners together to get some outcomes which is in our strategic plan and in our various master plans. So I'll leave it there. Happy to take questions.
Councillor Crossley.
I'm happy to move the recommendation as written.
Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Crossley?
I just wanted to say that I think this is a great proposal. The Regional Precincts and Partnership Program is $400 million over 3 years, and it encourages applicants obviously to work with key stakeholders to deliver projects. That's exactly what we're doing here, working with our World Heritage listed caves. That brings in close to 100,000 visitors to our area a year. So I think this is a big opportunity missed if we didn't apply for this. Putting in $50,000 if we were successful with Stream 1, see us get in the vicinity of $1 to $1.5 million. So, and as the CEO said, really you see minimal grants these days with zero co-contribution. So I believe this would be a great grant to chuck an application for.
Thank you, Councillor Crossley. Do I have a seconder? Are you a seconder?
Yes.
Councillor Goodman, thank you, and you, Marty.
Thank you. Yes, I'd also like to commend the work that has been done so far in thinking about what this could look like. I think it's a really exciting opportunity. I think I'd also like to take this opportunity to point out that there are benefits of having the LCLGA and boards like the Regional Development Limestone Coast. Not that we're debating that, but again, they come up here as stakeholders that strengthen these kind of applications. And I think also when opportunities like this come up and we start drawing on actions from our master plans, it underlines the value and importance of having done that, thinking ahead and having it documented, in master plans that we can then draw on and refer to for these kind of activities. So, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Any other commentary? Councillor Turner, Councillor Dennis, thank you. Yep. Councillor Turner.
I support the motion too, and I was at a function of significance on the weekend, and I just bumped into two strangers. They were podcasters. We exchanged pleasantries. Where you're from? What do you do? And they're from the north and south of Adelaide. I said I was from Narracor. Oh, we've just been there on a family trip recently. I said, out of interest, did you go to Minijumba? I didn't tell them who I was. I said, no. They said, we only went to the caves. And they said, what else is there? And they've been to the region a number of times, and their impression of what else is there in Narracor other than the caves, and they didn't really, I doubt that they came into the township. So I feel if we got 100,000 visitors a year, I'd like to understand the number of how many of those visit, but if it's 1 in 20 or 1 in 100 or 1 in 200, not many of them come to Narracor, and that's the one thing that we are famous for is the Narracor Caves. We're famous globally and nationally because it's very listed. And I really think it's something that we need to leverage off, and it'll deliver our best bang for our buck. So I think this is great. I commend the work that the CEO's done and his team, and to be shovel ready for grants and to be ready with the master plans behind it. I think it makes for good business sense.
Councillor Turner, any other discussion? Being that,
Can I?
Absolutely. Add some clarity.
Not necessarily, just another comment with regard to Councillor Turner's comments about people only visiting the cave. So before my time, we've had that Caves Connection type project to try to draw people back into Narracor when visiting caves, so there's no economic benefit to the town. So as I got in the report, we've just initiated our subscription to SpendMap, so it's software that tracks spend, so that can be both visitors to certain parts of our district, including the caves, so we can actually track where their spend is, so how much is actually getting spent in the town or where do they move from there. It also allows us to track where our local spend is, so for example, from an economic perspective, if we've got 20 or 30 million from our district being spent in Mount Gambier, Horsham, wherever, it can actually identify that by type of industry, so it may open up opportunities for other businesses to expand or come in. So that data, while we always speak of or ask questions of what is the advantage of the caves to the town, we'll then be able to actually start measuring that. So I think that's a benefit to the council, it's a benefit to our future funding applications, different approaches, etc.
Thank you, Mr. Smart. That'll be a valuable add-on. I put the motion moved by Councillor Crosling, seconded by Councillor Goodman. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 10. Just a smile.
Just for information, or happy to take questions.
Happy to take questions. Go. Councillor Grundy.
With reference to Clarkson's Road, I see there's a reference to native veg approval. My question is, what did that look like as far as the native veg approval for removal of native veg on the side of the road? I guess in the context of my question is the likes of Miles Road and all of these other roads where the green tape seems to be counterproductive and making it virtually impossible for us to improve our road network, and just what are the ramifications being of the native veg on Clarkson's Road?
Also, there's approximately 9 trees on Clarkson's Road that you have to get native veg approval to work through to remove, ranging in height and size from quite substantial trees to 1 or 2 smaller stumps. Approval was given, we had to do a bit of negotiation and do a slight movement of the road by about half a metre so we could get the 3 metre clearances, but we got it through no problems at all. And with regards to the other projects, road projects this year, native vegetation applications are in and they're being assessed and we're waiting on the outcomes of those decisions.
Councillor Grundy.
Did we have to write a cheque out to remove any of these trees, part with any funds to remove any of the native veg?
Yes, there's funds associated with the process and obviously payment to the Native Vegetation Council for the removal of these trees. And depending on the project and the number of trees, the value varies quite substantially.
Thank you, Mr. Sneed. Mr. Smart?
I tend to agree with your sentiments, Councillor Grundy. It can be frustrating both for administration and council that some of the approvals that you have to go through, some are legitimate, I think some are probably frustrating, perhaps a bit of red tape. 2 years ago we tried to do a joint project across LCLGA because your roadsides, it's not native veg, it's fire protection, a whole heap of things get I guess convoluted and a huge amount of red tape basically stops us doing things like building roads where it's on a road reserve, etc. So I only got advice today that Landscape SA is putting in a funding application at federal to hopefully reinitiate that project so we can actually get state government, and it's mainly state agencies, to the table, so you actually, when you want to do something on your roadside, you can go once and not have to go with 5 or 6 different agencies to actually get the outcomes you need. So it can be quite frustrating and time consuming.
Councillor Goodman?
I'd just like to second what Mr. Smart was saying, in that the process can be frustrating, and if there's ways of simplifying that so that the process is more straightforward, I think that would be very beneficial. I also think, though, that when it comes to work, if we're paying to cut down trees, that's just part of the cost of doing business. It's well established, it's part of the legislation, and actually these trees are things that we value highly in the landscape generally, and they shouldn't be treated any differently just because they're on a roadside. And a reminder that we are losing these trees at about 1 to 2% per year, so these are all death by 100 cuts kind of decisions, and they do stack up over time.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Grundy there also.
It just seems ironic that as South Australians, we're part of a council community, and as South Australians we're part of a state community, and we draw funds from the council to pay the state, and we're taking money off of ourselves to give to ourselves for really what benefit, particularly if there's going to be new trees established in their place. So that's the irony.
I think that may be a discussion for another place, Councillor Grundy, around native education and the income they receive. Any other questions of Mr. Smart? I'm assuming the fencing's been completed. North Parklands? Yeah. It has, thank you. Yeah. Any other questions? There being none. Finance? Mrs. Edmonds?
Thank you, Mayor Ross. I'm nothing further to add.
Thank you. Any questions for Mrs. Edmonds? Being done. Excellent. Minutes for recommendation. Would someone like to move that the minutes of the Narrabri Regional Livestock Exchange meeting held on the 24th of July be taken as read and confirmed? Councillor Grundy. You'd like to move and you'd like to speak?
Yes, please. Can I just give a brief report of the meeting that took place on the 24th of July, a few of the highlights. The financial report indicated that a year-to-date surplus of about $900,000 was achieved for the council, with the bulk of that income coming from cattle sales. Year-to-date cattle numbers and sheep numbers were slightly above the 5-year cumulative average. There was a visit from the EPA inspectors who reported congratulations to the staff, saying that the ponds, the settling ponds, were looking and performing as well as they had seen them for 10 years. Another aspect of the meeting which was discussed was the sheep EID funding, which is still unresolved as far as I know, unless Mr. Smart knows something different. However, Mr. Smart and Mr. Willsmore have been absolutely committed to the process of seeking the proper funding outcome, dealing with all of these separate agencies. And lastly, the NSQA internal audit was completed on the 4th of July, where Natalie McCrosty was able to oversee our record keeping practices are at the highest standard.
Thank you, Councillor Grundy. I think the staff of the Exchange are to be congratulated on the work they've done this year. It's been quite fairly trying, a fairly trying year for the operations at the Livestock Exchange. I have a seconder, Councillor Maguire. Any further commentary? There being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried, thank you. Would someone like to move that the Nowra Regional Livestock Exchange Financial Report 30 June is noted and referred to the Audit and Risk Committee? Councillor Downwood, Councillor Ireland. Any discussion? I put the motion. All those in favour? Carried, thank you. And the next recommendation is the administration bring back the sheep ID levy modelling once the final costings have been funded and is known. Of course, that's an important thing to do because we have no idea. We were hoping for 2.3 and we actually don't know. Mr Smart is meeting with, and he can explain, I think next week, to try and hope, well, who knows what will happen at that meeting, but that is essential that we have a direction to go when we finally have a known number. So I'd like someone to move to that effect. Councillor Grundy.
Thank you, Ross. Yeah, I'm happy to move. This just came up at our board meeting again. The board is the first to acknowledge that there's not a financial magic pudding out at the sale yards, and to that end, given the uncertainty of the funding arrangements, we've got the feds who have really made promises about what should be happening with EID, with promises of funding. Some of the questions are, has that funding trickled down to the state? Has it been given to the state? Has the state passed it on? Maybe those questions are yet to be answered. In the meantime, if we don't receive the required funding, there'll need to be a fallback position, and so one of those that we may consider going forward would be a levy placed on ultimately the producer.
Councillor Grundy, would someone care to second that motion? Councillor Ireland, thank you. Any further discussion? Being done, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried, thank you. Yes.
Just by way of update on the sheep EID matter, so Mr Willsmore and myself got a meeting with Minister Scriven and the CEO of PIRSA next Wednesday. So it's us, Mount Gambier Sale Yards and Dublin Sale Yards meeting collectively. For the remainder, some of this week, we'll try to establish what we present, what our non-negotiables are, which is mainly us wanting the nine races retained and scannable rather than the 5 that PIRSA are suggesting. So as the funding offers currently sit, our spend was in round figures 2.4 mil. The funding offered at this stage equates to about 40% rather than the 75% promised by the Minister. So collectively we'll go to the Minister and CEO with a position with some non-negotiables but with some room to move on what works we need to do. The other complex situations, they're still sticking to 30 June 25 to have all this in. We don't think we've got much hope of actually, once we find out the funding, how we can actually achieve that, given that you have to have the yards operating at all times, and being able to do those works over that period of time. So we'll be taking that to the Minister as well, and we'll update both the NRLE board and council once we have an answer.
Thank you, Mr Smart. Item 13, bylaws.
Thank you. Bylaw report there for you. Won't go through it in detail. But, So council has endorsed its bylaws. Separate to that, you now have the opportunity to make motions about where some of the bylaws apply and also the expiation fees. What you decide tonight, you can make decisions at a different time to either add or reduce areas that they operate in, depending on what may happen in our community at different times. Overall, we don't expiate a lot under our bylaws, so it's not a significant revenue raiser of any sort. We generally go down the educative line, and last resort is to expiate. So both ways you can continue or make future motions. If you don't think the $300 expiation fee is appropriate, you can either increase that or decrease it purely by a future motion, and the application of areas you can do that in future as well. So how bylaws used to work, they all used to go in the bylaw, which made it difficult to amend. This is then outside of it, which makes it more agile for councils. Recommend the recommendations to you.
Councillor Maguire.
Happy to move that, Mayor.
Happy to move. Thank you, Councillor Maguire. Councillor Ross, second. Is there any discussion, any questions around the bylaws? There being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. A recommendation the Council resolves pursuant to section 246(5)(b). There's a lot going on there. That they will be the expiation fees for those bylaws. Would someone like to move to that effect? Councillor Crosley. Councillor Turner. Any further discussion? Being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried.
Thank you. Similar to bylaws, which have to be reviewed once every 7 years, we now have the electoral representation review, which we're required by legislation to review once every 7 years. So, we'll hope to commence that shortly. The process to do so is outlined in the report. It is a slightly simplified process due to some good legislative changes, which previously had to do a report, then you had to go to public, then you had to do another final report which looked much the same. You had to go to the public again, and you wondered why you perhaps get some disinterest from anyone having some input. So there will be a number of workshops held with council to inform the representation report. So you can put your ideas about whether it be wards, how many elected members, whole range of things that you can consider, and we'll lock in some dates for that. Recommendations there, but happy to take questions.
If I could just ask Ms Edmonds, what have we set aside in the budget for this project?
I think, from memory, I think we set aside about 8,000. I think it's going to cost us about 5.
Okay.
So we'll come in just under, we'll come in a bit under our budget.
Okay. It was just the financial implication for some of these regulatory things. Thank you. Would someone like to move? Councillor Goodman. Seconded, Councillor Dennis. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you very much. Land lease. Ms Edmonds. Mrs.
So this one is just a standard renewal of an existing land lease after renewal. I think we've talked about the self-explanatory. I can see it has minor financial implications. Take any questions, and it is for the standard 10 years that we offer.
Very good. Thank you, Ms Edmonds. Are there any questions of Ms Edmonds around the proposed lease for Hangar 11? Councillor Downward. Would you like to move that?
I'll move, but I'd like to speak to it. I note that with allowing a 5-year plus 5, what's the issues with putting it into either a 10 or a 21-year for argument's sake? I mean, the word is still going to be the same. It's not going to alter anything, but it does give the operators much more certainty of what they've got.
Certainly. So I'm only basing the lease renewals on historical practices. We do have to seek approval from Crown Lands Department every time we renew a lease. I'm not sure if the original arrangement has stemmed from historicals with Crown Lands. It is something I'm happy to follow up to discuss with Trevor and move forward with if possible.
Mr Mayor, could I suggest that we follow up on that before we actually sign the lease time? Or
this particular, how long has this lease been expired? Expired only in June. Any ramifications there, Mr Smart?
They have a month-to-month occupation under the lease. Not sure discussions that I've had with him, are they happy with that lease term?
Yeah, in this situation, we usually ask for expression of interest to renew. In this situation, we have to follow up with the lessee. We haven't ever had the inquiry before, so hence why it's never been something that's been done. I think whether we make it a standard, whether we look at individuals, majority of them that I've seen are hangers rather than commercial businesses, but that's not to say that there any less reason why they can't credit the 21 years. So happy to follow up. I would like to make inquiries with Crown Lands and see if there are any implications as far as that goes, and perhaps some of the historicals as to why we traditionally would have done 10-year leases. So happy to look into it and happy to follow it up.
Thank you.
Councillor Maguire?
Do you suggest I move to lay on the table, Mayor?
I'm not sure whether that's what we need to do, Councillor, but thank you. I'll just have a little run around here. Councillor Turner?
If it's appropriate, Mr Mayor, I'd move a motion that we defer the lease and seek approval for a 21-year term, a 21 and a 21-year term. I don't know if
the lease
as a suggestion, I would suggest we go with what's in front of you. It doesn't mean we can't then go back to the lessee and other. So part of the, I think, discussion we'll have with Councillor Ireland's motion on notice, I think we need to have some discussion, find out what we can't do from a Crown Land perspective, not necessarily council, because we do 21 by 21s. Yeah. We can do that. But I think so there are the commercial users, which obviously is important that the tenures extended. I think some of the hangars are probably some of it's more recreational, so I think that may suit them. But it's discussions we can have with the whole group of users at the aerodrome to, they may be happy. Some may be happy with those terms and not necessarily want 21 by 21. There'll be some that might like 21 by 21. So I don't think it's a blanket rule for everyone out there. It's I think sometimes allowing us to have flexibility, but it really depends what they would like as well. So I would suggest we give them a lease, because they haven't got one at the moment. At a later date we can, if they want extend the lease, and as the discussions that council will have, we can always offer to provide alternative terms to them as well.
Just a question then, does the lease give provision for discontinuation as is, rather than signing this lease for a 5 by 5? I mean, most leases, if it's not renewed, there's a clause in there that says it continues as is, and giving us a time frame to settle this, because I think I really appreciate the input from Jason tonight, and what else are we going to do with the land? And we're not going to sell it. It's providing a service for the community, and I think it gives security for investors out there to actually go to their financial institutions and get borrowings against a long-term lease, and I think it's something we should look at as a priority for those people that are invested for the long term out there for our community. Which means that if there's no sense of urgency, that this could either just lay on the table, or the purpose of me wanting to move the motion was we defer it whilst we inquire. If we, I'm happy not to move anything, but I think the goal should be to give security to the...
I think it's really important that this person does have a lease, and if Councillor Grundy did want to speak, leaving it on the table. I don't know what the outs of the lease are, Mr. Smart, and what the opportunities to change are.
to change if you mutual benefit, mutual agreement, sorry, if the discussions that will occur ongoing from an aerodrome generally and broadly. If we have a discussion with the lessee here, we have a mutual agreement that we change that to 21 by 21. That's a process, as Ms Edmonds said, we need to check with the Crown. There are some purely process. I don't think they would be knocking you back, but it's another process to go through. The longer the lease, the more you have to ask the state. That's all. Doesn't mean we can't do it.
Could I ask someone to move this motion, please?
I've got a question.
You've got a question?
Before it gets moved, please. Yeah.
Thank you.
Look, I think if the lessee is not compromised legally in the meantime, and we've got a number of questions here or a number of uncertainties, what's the harm with laying on the table, for 1 or 2 months? While those questions
I think therein lies the question, how long's a bit of string and how long, it may lay while we get some clarification around this. My preference would be for this motion either to get up or not, and then we could move on, because I'm concerned at the time it'll take to leave it on the table. We know we don't like things left on the table for too long, and the time that this may take to remove it may be beyond a couple of months.
I'd like to move the motion as written, Madam Speaker.
Councillor Dennis?
It's me.
We originally got a movement by Councillor Dennis. You happy to second that? Councillor Dennis, second. Thank you.
Yeah. I don't see a compromise on anyone here. I think we can. I think everyone's had various questions around this lease arrangement. I think the Mayor and the CEO have made quite clear that we can come to a compromise with the lessee if we do agree to a 21 and 21. In the interim, they have a lease. I think it's a no-brainer to move the motion and then give them the 21 by 21 if they want it.
Thank you, Councillor Dennis. Councillor Grundy.
What are the legal implications of entering into a lease and then one party maybe not wanting to rescind the lease and then both parties are bound by the lease, when in fact the intention might be that there is a 21 or there's not a 21-21. So again, I would suggest that if the lessee is not compromised in the next 2 months by not entering a lease immediately, what's the harm?
So, yes, I understand your point. The point being, what we're doing is we're giving this gentleman certainty. He understood what the lease would be when he actually, undertook the renewal. It was 5 by 5. So in his case, nothing changes for Pan Air Proprietary Limited. Remains the same. In the meantime, the council will go through some process to look at 21 and 21. Do you wish to speak?
Yeah.
Councillor Ross?
Yeah, I just want to support the motion as there. In regards to leases, well, we can agree to go with the lease. I would have thought if the leases are contingent with his business and his finance, I think the financier will probably want to have a lease in place with someone, not have it out swinging. So from a risk perspective, I would say that would be something that might be. But to me, it's only for leisure, is that right? Yeah, so I don't know whether there's any business ramifications there, but I can't see why we just don't go with the lease there. The person can decide whether they want to sign it. That's the other thing too. So they may want to sit on it for a little bit until we do find out a bit further information. But why don't we just proceed with what's there, and then so we can move forward, and then we can still investigate at the same time.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Downwood?
I'll close it out. So,
leave of council to speak, yes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm happy for it to be as written, but I sort of get the feeling around the room that there's a lean towards 21 for the setup. From reading the lease agreement, council's completely covered for all legal requirements. Jason can't receive loan against the lease, so that's not really the issue. The issue is for continuity for him and the money that he's spending to be there. So I'm happy to go through with that as stated. but I also want council to follow through and have a look at what we can do about giving them the 21 by 21, and then at some stage down the track when it's obvious that we can make alteration to that lease.
Sure.
Happy with that?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I put the motion. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The motion is carried. Thank you. Item 14, reports for information, operations. Thank you very much. Nothing to add. Oh, Mr. Steed, you have something.
Well, I was just going to take the reports around and take any questions if you
Yep. No questions from Mr. Steed, and the grading's going well, Mr. Steed, and tell me the contractor's doing a great job?
Yes, the grading season is going well. Bit of a slow start, but we are getting there, thank you.
Excellent. 14.2, planning and compliance. Mr. McCroskey.
Good evening, Ross. At the time of writing the report, just on the removal of vegetation in regards to the trees, we've since now had a secondary location in regards to standing trees that have been removed, and we're now working with SAPOL to see if we can identify who those parties are offending. If anyone sees or would like to report anything, they can advise SAPOL or council.
Thank you, Mr. McCroskey. Are there any questions? Community engagement. Mrs. Collins.
Nothing further, thank you, Mayor. I'm happy with any questions.
Mrs. Collins, I just wanted to reiterate that I happened to be in Lucendale on a day that there'd been some activity at the town hall. You know what that activity's called, I forget now. But it's gone from 1 month to every second week. And it's fantastic. I think it's book reading with the little kids, like the little ones.
Yakka babies.
Younger ones, yeah.
And
oh, yakka babies, are they?
Yakka babies and active story time.
And it's appreciated a lot within the community, and that's why they've taken it from monthly to every second week. So the uptake's fantastic. So thank you, Mrs. Collins, for that. Any questions? Publications, item 15, there being none. Questions with notice, nil. Motions with notice, 17.1. I'll ask whether we could have, well, Councillor Ireland, what we do have is a recommendation proposed, a motion from Councillor Ireland. I was wondering whether we could take leave of the meeting for general discussion around the item. Do I need to have him to put that recommendation forward? No. Or do we could have the general discussion? I think I'd prefer to have the general discussion before a recommendation is put forward. And I ask for your approval to leave meeting procedure. Thank you. Mr. Ireland, Councillor Ireland, you can keep the ball rolling.
Thank you, Mayor Ross. Mr. Law was kind enough to enlighten us to a fair bit of stuff earlier on about what's happening out at the airport, and I dropped out there Friday and had a bit of a look around. As far as views of the aerodrome go, and I'm sorry I'm being repetitive here, people, but Narraport Aero Club flying instructor, flight tech, aircraft maintenance, heli farm, Southern Aerial Ag, the RFDS, Westpac Rescue 1 helicopter, police, CFS fire bombers and Black Hawk helicopters, SA Pan networks, the bank plane, recreational users and many other tourist flights. In talking out there, I hear that there's actually tour companies from Melbourne that are actually dropping in on the way through to refuel, etc. So in excess of 2,500 aircraft a year are using this aerodrome of ours. And approximately 160,000 litres of avgas for refuelling over a 12-month period. That's a rough estimate. And I'm unsure of the Jet A1 fuel, that's Mr. Law's department. 500,000 if you want to last year. Thank you. visiting medical specialists is also something that's close to the heart and important for our district, as is the potential for further tourism. So I'm just trying to emphasise how the aerodrome has grown and its importance to our area. So I think it's looking forward is what we've got to concentrate on from now on with what's happening out the aerodrome. I'm happy to have some discussion. It'd be great, thanks.
The floor is open for general discussion. Councillor Grundy.
Well, I'd like to ask Mr Smart how he sees this Section 41 committee and how it might be made up.
Question. So I've had some discussions with Councillor Ireland on the possible formation of it. Listening to Jason before has slightly changed my thinking. So any committee can be formed for as long. I think the important part for council is to make sure it's quite clear on what its purpose is, because none of us like any more meetings than we have to have just for the sake of having meetings. So you need to have quite a clear purpose, and the other part of it is the membership. So, as evidenced by the NRLE committee, we don't have agents, etc. on there. Now there's, again, taking Jason's comments on board, Council already has a strategic asset committee. Aerodrome is a strategic asset. The only, I'm comfortable with a Section 41 committee for the aerodrome, but some of the restrictions that you may get of having independence on there is once you're on that committee, you're governed by the Local Government Act. So a lot of the commercial users, once you start discussing stuff, you may have to declare a conflict of interest and you have to leave the room, which would be counterproductive to actually hearing their views and trying to progress what should happen at the aerodrome. So while it sounds simple to have a committee, that can actually tie one hand behind your back. Using NRLE as an example, they have the Combined Agents Group, which collectively they feed in their ideas. That goes to the NRLE board. Something similar, which is already in place at the aerodrome, could happen. So you could have your commercial users who have an established group. They could collectively present to a SAP or an aerodrome committee or whatever it might be. Likewise, the Aero Club committee can do the same thing, and you get a collective view. So I'm supportive of a committee. I just don't want particularly the commercial users to become frustrated with because it is regulated by the Local Government Act. So you don't want to then tie their opinion up by them having to leave the room when you're there to listen to them. So that's the complexities of having a formal group. You could potentially look at a working group, so it's less formal. So that's some feedback that what appears like a good idea that can tie you up.
Councillor Maguire. Standing councillor.
Yes, I agree that there probably needs to be a group formed, but listening to the CEO's comments, I think probably a working group would be, although it's less formal, probably gives people more of an opportunity to speak and draw on their expertise rather than it being a conflict. Whether it be a working group that reports directly to the SAP committee, I think is the way to go. I guess probably the only other question is, I know it's not officially terms of reference that we do need with a working group, but it's something as an elected body we probably do have to establish. Is 5 too many? Is it 5 and 2? Probably Councillor Grundy with the sale yards. It's probably a balance of elected members and the public. I think probably having 5 members from the Aero Club and 5 elected members, it would probably get lost. I think it needs to be probably a little bit more tight-knit, but that's just my thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor Maguire. One would assume that it would be advisory, There was Councillor McDowell.
Yes, Mr Mayor, Councillor Rayner, his memory may be better, or that he'd been there during the time, but back in 2000 there was a board of which Council had 2 members on that met regularly once a month. I reckon we met. And obviously that will be very similar to the lifestyle board, where came back to council with recommendations were put forward by the Aero Club. There was Aero Club members that were part of that, other bodies that were had respective interests, plus council. And I know at that time was when through that group we got the auto lighting and the beacon put in. So there was some really good stuff that was achieved by that group at that time. So I take on what Mr. Smart said about conflict of interest, and I can say that that can be it's a bit of a mystery when you're trying to have a body that's recommending something, and then all of a sudden, just by the pure nature of it, they've got a conflict of interest because that's what they do. So I guess we've got to take your. I mean, I'm very much in favour of having a body, but
Mr. Smart. I guess it's a question for members. So, is the committee about helping review the master plan, or is it the ongoing management operations of the committee? If it's about a review of the master plan, so we get a collective view of getting the various projects, in that plan, both from our obligations under CASA, etc., but then there's the commercial side of it, what the opportunities are. So if it's about that, you're probably better off having a short-term working group, which is still new terms of reference for a working group, as you do for the botanical working group. So there's some guidance there, what you're there for. So you can, in a working group, it's easy to have, say, 5 and 5 sitting around a table, because you're quite focused on what you're trying to achieve, and conflict of interest issues don't apply because it's an unofficial group. So it's probably something we have to work with the commercial operators, what suits. So my mind was reasonably fixed before Jason spoke, but he did say we don't want to just be sitting around a table having meetings, we actually want to get some outcomes. So how do we best get the outcomes? If it's purely about reviewing the master plan, which is a pretty important step, I think a working group would probably work better. That reports to SAP. That's a suggestion.
Councillor Goodwin.
I'm also interested in better understanding what the scope and outcomes of this group might be. I think, as Mr. Smart is saying, if it's around the review of the master plan with a commercial focus, a working group set up in that manner would be a good way to go. If the scope is broader, as Mr. Law referenced, emergency services, CFS and that kind of thing, I think it would be beneficial to consider including the Lucindale airstrip in that as well. I think that these things speak to each other. They need to understand what the opportunities exist, and if we're looking at upgrades, we need to understand what infrastructure benefits both sides in how we prioritise that kind of work. So I think it is important that we nail down what the scope and outcomes of the group is, because I think that will dictate which direction we go.
Thank you, Councillor Turner.
From my perspective, I think the priority would be to get the key stakeholders together to review the master plan for the Narrabri Airport. I mean, Lucindale can take some learnings from that, but the wider and longer you go things, the longer it takes, So I think the key stakeholders at the airport are going to have a lot more to offer than us sitting around the room of what the current and future needs might be, and key management and stakeholders from the Narrabri Lucindale Council could work collaboratively in that sense. I'd agree with the CEO that we need a committee that has a short-term time frame to review the master plan with key stakeholders, and then that'll encourage whatever needs to happen quicker. If we try and make it bigger than that, bigger means longer, and I think Jason's frustration, we don't be waiting years for something that might take months or 1 to 2 years.
Just that the working group is still accountable to the elected body, which
yes,
I think has value.
Councillor Rayner.
20 years ago, Councillor Crash, well, you mentioned 20 years ago they had a committee, and the Aero Club all they wanted to do was to keep their little airport to themselves. There wasn't any development wanted. They just wanted their own little airport. I think things have changed. It sounds pretty good to me. So it looks like it's going to go forward.
Thank you, Councillor Raymond. Councillor Crossley.
I just wanted to agree with Councillor Turner's sentiments. I pretty much had written down here that Jason said they're not dying to get on committees, and I completely understand that. People don't want to be sitting on committees for the sake of sitting on a committee. And I think in Jason's letter to us on the 26th of June, it did say there that he believed the review of the aerodrome master plan was in motion, which it isn't currently. So I believe that forming a working group with a shorter lifespan, so we can undertake a review. We obviously already had the user group formed by the key stakeholders at the aerodrome to obviously engage with them. The master plan was actually done back in 2018, so it's already 6 years old. So it would be really good to obviously review that and obviously, that would give us some key priorities and be able to work for the future improvement of our aerodrome.
Would someone like to? Councillor McGuire.
Just one quick question. Through the chair to the CEO, I guess as an elected body, how do we come up with the terms of reference for this working group?
I think a suggested approach was going to be, Councillor Ryan was going to move a motion on notice to, perhaps slightly different from that, to create a terms of reference, whether it be for a committee or a working group. Perhaps we could leave that as flexible, so that council administration would come back to council probably next meeting with a suggested terms of reference, but perhaps don't say, terms of reference for a working group or committee. Then that leaves some flexibility. That way we can have some discussions with the commercial users, perhaps what suits them, because probably seems pointless in setting up a committee that doesn't suit their purposes. We may as well set something up that elected members are still the accountable body, but their engagements is done to suit the commercial users.
Is it in it?
No, sorry, Mr. Laws. We'll go back into meeting procedure in a moment. The important thing that comes out of this is that there may be terms of reference, and the administration will liaise with the Narracoorte Aerodrome user group to help develop a term of reference. Mr. Smart, would that be appropriate?
That would be sensible, I think.
Would that be sensible? Very good. I'd like someone to move that we go.
Question.
One question, Mr. Grundy.
Thank you, Ross. I was just looking, in the event that this is lost, that prevents us from revisiting a section 41 for the aerodrome committee, for the aerodrome for 12 months, I think, doesn't it?
I just don't know.
Really what I'm alluding to is I wonder if Councillor Ireland was to not pursue this tonight, withdrew it, and then there's the flexibility of in 3 months' time or 4 months' time after the homework is being done, the flexibility is still there to either adopt a section 41 committee or a working group.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Grundy. Are we agreed to go back into meeting procedure? Thank you very much. I have a motion, a proposed motion. Councillor Rowland.
If I could withdraw that motion, please, Mayor Ross.
Accepted.
Right, thank you.
So administratively, we'll develop a terms of reference and bring it back to council in consultation with the commercial users.
Do you wish to have a resolution around that?
That's up to you.
Sorry, I was just going to ask whether you wanted a motion along those lines, Mr. Smart.
It is up to me, and we will.
Would you like me to suggest something?
Thank you.
Councillor Owen might want to move. That council administration prepare a draft terms of reference for a working group or committee for presentation back to council at September 24 meeting.
Or committee, sorry.
Yeah, so I've left all in there. Yeah.
Or committee, then section 41 committee, is it? That's
Yes.
what we're after.
Just
The council prepare a draft terms of reference for working group on committee or committee for the September council meeting. Yep.
Thanks for the aerodrome.
And there is an understanding. That the administration will liaise with the Narracourt Aerodrome Workers Group. That is, thank you very much. Councillor Rowland moved.
Well, excuse me, we've got nothing in there.
So, sorry, Narracourt Aerodrome.
About the Narracourt Aerodrome, actually, have we?
Yep, after A, then Narracourt Aerodrome.
And if I'm happy to move that, please, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rowland. Do you wish to speak? Anything further? Thank you.
Nothing further.
A seconder, please. Councillor Grundy, any further discussion? All those in favour? Carried, thank you. There are no questions without notice, motions without notice, but we do have a matter to be heard in confidence. At that point, item 20.1, I'll ask the public, everyone bar the councillors unfortunately, you must leave.